The United States issued a global travel warning for its citizens on Friday. The U.S. State Department is citing what it calls a credible intelligence threat from al-Qaeda. This on top of plans to close U.S. embassies across the Middle East and North Africa on Sunday. CCTV's Sean Callebs has been following developments. He joins us from our D.C. newsroom with the latest.
Yes, Mike, thanks very much. The international threat the U.S. State Department announced just yesterday has now blossomed into a global travel alert over the possibility of an al-Qaeda attack that could be launched as early as this weekend. The travel warning covers a broad area, including much of North Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Southeast Asia. The U.S. says a total of 21 embassies will be shuttered at least one day, Sunday, August 4th. However, the State Department does say those closings could be extended. The threat apparently originates from Yemen. The embassies that are closed, you can see here on this map, are chiefly in Muslim nations across North Africa, and they include Libya, Egypt, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Yemen, Bahrain, and Bangladesh. Congressional leaders in the United States have been briefed on the concern. The Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, says the fear extends beyond the usual chit-chat, adding there is, quote, some understanding of the seriousness of the threat. International officials say this threat appears worse than any concern in a long time.
We're aware of the move by the U.S., and we are in contact with our U.S. counterparts. The delegations of the EU in affected region are liaising with U.S. embassies, and at this stage we have no evidence that threats concern specifically EU delegations, but we are taking all necessary precautions.
U.S. officials bluntly say the goal is to save American lives. They believe the attack could be linked to the Islamic holy month of Ramadan, which ends next week. Last year on September 11th, the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya was attacked, resulting, Mike, as you remember, in the deaths of 4 American diplomats, including Ambassador Chris Stevens.
Sean Callebs live in our newsroom. Thanks so much. So what should we make of the closing of these embassies on Sunday? Earlier, I spoke to Seth Jones from the RAND Corporation and asked him his thoughts on the move and whether this will actually help in the fight against al-Qaeda.
Well, I'm hearing a couple of things. One is that there is apparently a pretty concerning al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula plot. It's not clear the timing, or it's not clear where it is and where it's expected to happen, but one that's viewed as potentially imminent. Second, also hearing threats to U.S. embassies, U.S. individuals, and other Western individuals and infrastructure in a pretty expansive area from Tunisia, through Yemen and Somalia, and down to Islamabad and Kabul in South Asia, by a whole range of groups, from al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb to the Haqqani network in Afghanistan. Probably not coordinated, but threats to a number of U.S. embassies and other Western targets. Third, just real briefly, also some information apparently that the U.S. has obtained about at least one or more of those plots tied to the end of Ramadan, so which may explain part of the timing here.
Why not? What's the rationale behind the alerts coming out? What seems like a great deal of fanfare. It seems like you could do this two ways. You could do it quietly, or you could do it the way they're doing it now. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Why the big pronouncements? Is there a reason for that?
Well, there are probably two reasons for it. One is I take it that the administration has learned a lesson, rightly or wrongly, from Benghazi, which is it's better to be proactive and get the information out beforehand rather than have to be reactive and explain to Congress and the American people why you didn't do anything beforehand, why you didn't put out information on a potential threat, in that case to a U.S. ambassador. The second is some have argued, the evidence here is not real clear, some have argued that by pushing information out publicly, it can act as a deterrent for some terrorist attacks by making operatives wonder whether they've been infiltrated, why is there information about our plot, and then at least getting them to back off on the timing of the attack. Now, whether or not those are good reasons is a separate issue. I suspect the reason we're getting this information now is some combination of those two.
We've heard so much about the drone strikes in Pakistan and Yemen. We keep hearing about these high-level targets who keep being taken out. And one kind of gets the sense that there's all this headway being made in the fight against al-Qaeda, and yet then you hear something like this. So what do we make of this?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about the utility of drone strikes, and what appears to be the case is that drone strikes, especially in Yemen and Pakistan, have killed some senior officials and have disrupted some plots. But the reality is that al-Qaeda and a range of its affiliates here, because we're talking about a pretty decentralized range of pretty much all Sunni Islamist Salafi groups, that they've taken advantage of the Arab Spring in North Africa. They've taken advantage now of the fight in Syria. What they're trying to take advantage of what they perceive as a U.S. exit from Afghanistan. And I think they're really happy about this prospect of Secretary of State Kerry's pronouncement in Islamabad now that the U.S. may stop its drones to reconstitute themselves. So the administration certainly has talked about defeating or nearly defeating al-Qaeda. I think the reality, though, is they're quite far from being dead right now.
Let me ask you one final question. And part of the statement that came from the State Department, I'm just going to read part of it. It says that they may focus efforts to conduct attacks in the period between now and the end of August. And so August 31st is this optimal date, but then September 11th is just around the corner. Why not make this more blanket and say, but you ought to be on guard up until September 11th, obviously, given what happened in Benghazi?
Well, you could certainly do that. Again, the issue is in part probably, hopefully, it's an issue that is contingent on what threat reporting has indicated. You know, when I served in the government, the key things that I would look at are when terrorists are talking about potential plots, are they associating it with specific days and time frames? And what that might indicate now is something, again, around the end of Ramadan. What certainly may be possible is that there's just not a lot of talk among some of these terrorist groups like al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula on repeating something around September 11th. So that it may be as simple as that.